Hello, Jenny Hall here for Honeybee Stamps. Today I would like to share a project with you created by using the Spring Bouquets die set. I'll also be using a really fun technique called ink smooshing. The ink smooshing is created by first placing your stamp pad directly on your non-porous work surface and spray it with some water to dilute the color. Then I take the textured side of a piece of watercolor paper and dip it or smoosh it down directly into that fluid, and it gives a really fun and unique look. Ink smooshing can be done with different color combinations as well. This color combination on screen is created to give an off-white look to some of the daisies. I thought this would be something that would not stand out too much against the whites that I'm going to pair them with. So this is just a nice neutral color. Once this is dry, then it will die cut very easily. Now I'm going to create a brown piece of paper that is done in the same way, and it is going to be for the basket and for the centers. And you can see here, as I didn't add as much water, just what a difference the textured side of the watercolor paper makes. It really lends a very fun and textured look. You could use a couple of different colors here, do some brown, let it dry, and then maybe go over it with a different color, maybe darker or lighter, and so you would get a very big variance of color on your finished panel. Once that panel is dry, then it can be dipped back in to darken the colors, and it's such a fun technique to share. Now I'm going to start creating my die cuts, and I'm going to create an even number of large daisy to the small daisy. And I'm going to also create some out of plain white paper. After making my die cuts, I was able to see that I didn't quite get enough of that green color on the paper as I needed to. So I thought, well, I'm going to need to add more green color. Why not make it a different shade of green? The first time around, the greens really mixed together really nicely, which is super, but I want to have more of a contrast. So that's why I'm using that darker of the green. And while I had it already here pooled up on my work surface, I grabbed a small paintbrush and added some splatters. Now I'm going to use the Spring Lullaby paper pad and a scalloped die, both from Honeybee Stamps, to create the background for the floral basket. My greeting will come from Welcome Home stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that on a piece of white paper, and then I'll use one of these really cool sentiment banner dies. I use them so much in my projects. There's so many different sizes. Here's the fun part for me. I really love building up these flowers. So I used a Marvy jewel picker, and I added liquid glue to the center of the smaller of the two daisies, and I'm letting them dry while I add my back panel in place. Once I have a little tiny piece of foam tape on the back of the larger of the two daisies, I will use my fingers in order to kind of crimp up the petals and make them stand up a little bit more 3D. Before I add the daisies, I'm adding in some greenery. I'm using liquid glue to hold them in place, except for at the very top of most of those die-cut leaves, there's one piece of foam adhesive up at the top to make that top leaf kind of stand up and be seen. I'm adding the daisies, and you can see now the difference between the off-white and the solid white. And I really love how that very subtle color change is able to be seen. So I'm making sure that on the very few that are white versus off-white, I'm adding a contrast to them. That way they look a bit more dimensional. And this is so much fun, just taking my fingers and moving those petals, bringing them up and making them stand up. It's just, for me, this is just more like having fun than getting a job done by making a card to gift to someone. It's just fun to play with all of these little die cuts. So I'm going to create an area off to this right-hand side and add my sentiment to where it lays on top of the greenery. And that way it can be seen, but it doesn't cover up all of those really pretty flowers. Now I'm going to add some wedding ring rhinestones from the honeybee shop, and I'll add those, and then in the middle of all of those little flower centers, I'm using the Spectrum Noir Sparkle Pen. Wink of Stella works really good here. Now you can see that shiny sparkle center. Thank you so much for joining us today for another honeybee video, and we look forward to spending time with you next time.